Got it. All right. Great. So how's everybody doing today? Heidi and Mike in your respective corners of the world. Actually, you're in the same corner of the world.
We are in similar
Yes, we
corners
are.
of the world. Yes.
Oh, how's the weather over there in Dallas, Texas today?
It's gorgeous. Last 2 days have been beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta
It's
be in
definitely
the
started to,
80s.
and it's starting to feel like fall. It's awesome. It's really
Oh.
kind of chilly in the morning and stuff. So it's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. I love this weather.
Yep.
Yeah, fall is just the best time. I feel like fall and spring, I feel my soul like come alive. And then
Mhm.
hibernation happens in the dead of winter, in the dead of
Mhm.
summer when it's too hot.
Exactly. It's kind of like, I don't know, there's just like anticipation, right? Of something to come. I don't know why. It just feels great. Yeah.
Yeah, love
Mhm.
that feeling. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. Let me do some double check-in as we allow folks to come on in. All right. So we'll give it just another moment and allow a few more to join. Okay, great. Okay, well, I think we are just a couple minutes, 1 or 2 minutes past the top of the hour, so good time as any to get everything started. So I would like to thank everybody and officially welcome you to today's session. My name is Kalia Garrido and I head up events and marketing here at Great Data Minds. A little bit about us. Great Data Minds is a collective of passionate data activists, and we are on a mission to modernize the world of data. We do this in a couple different ways. The first is that we have our services arm, and that's happening over at gdminnovationlabs.com. This is our strategic planning, education, the deployment of critical data projects. And then we also have greatdataminds.com, which is where we run all of our events, just like the great event we're about to have today, as well as produce a lot of content, videos. It's kind of where the conversation around data is happening for us. A little bit of housekeeping before we get going. This is a webinar, so of course your cameras and microphones are off, but we welcome conversation. We would love you to use the chat or the Q&A if you have a question as we're going through our conversation today, but we'll also reserve a little bit of time at the end of the session to have more of a formal Q&A if you'd like to hold your question until then. And so today's event we are excited for. This is our next episode in our Leadership Perspective series. And this is where we seek out and find some of the most innovative data and analytics leaders across the globe. And today, this will be no exception to the stress on innovation here. We have Heidi Bailey joining us today as our special guest. Heidi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
We are excited. So I'm going to go through your bio. Okay, ready for this? So we know that you're the VP of Futures and AI at the Integer Group, and that's great. You also have a BA in International Business with minors in chemistry and then German from
That's right.
Texas Tech University. That's really cool. Cool blend, different. I didn't expect the German, but awesome. She also holds certificates for futurist thinking through the Institute of Future and Digital Acceleration from Southern Methodist University. And perhaps most interestingly is that she is an unabashed sneaker collecting, travel loving, coffee enthusiast who has dedicated her life's work to understanding and predicting what's coming next, except when it comes to her daughter and her next sentence out of her mouth, because that is always a surprise. And I can understand that. I got one of my own too. And of course, joining us today, we have our very own Mike Lampa. He is our Chief Analytics Officer here at Great Data Minds and GDM Innovation Labs. Mike has got a boatload of strategic and practical experience in data and analytics, both as an enterprise user and consultant. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Mike, please do take it away.
Thank you, Kalia. Heidi, welcome. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation as well.
Yeah, let's get at it. So Heidi, who are you? Tell me a little bit of the background and the context that brought you to this point in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the advertising industry for the majority of my career. And through that was always kind of involved in technology, data, what's coming up, what's new, what are the new technologies being released. And I I essentially, every time a new technology was released or anything interesting in the marketplace was happening, and I would always put up my hand, right? And I would say, hey, I would like to do this. I think this is super interesting. And people would, people would kind of step away and say, I don't really understand it. I don't want to do it. And I would be the one that'd be like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. I want to do it, right? Anything that would drive some form of change or I found kind of interesting are the things that I would then try to be part of. And through kind of practicing that and always wanting to do something new and different, I started to do a lot of research and reading of the things that are happening in the marketplace, and kind of got into the position I am today, right? Through various projects. I kind of raised my hand on a pretty significant data project many years ago. And through that, started to work with really interesting technologies back then, like auto machine learning was kind of a new thing back then, because things were still being very much hand coded. And that basically led me to where I am today, where I'm kind of leading, AI, but also kind of futurist thinking for the Integer Group.
So there is a dearth of technology out there supporting your industry, isn't there? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, right at the beginning, it was like programmatic media, right? Like it was fairly new and people were like, well, what is supply side? What is the demand side? And then how do you take advantage of that? Or how do you even integrate this technology into the agency landscape, right? And so because it was fairly automated, it did scare some people, but those who took advantage of it right in the early years, obviously reap the benefits, right? And so, anything kind of like that, I was like, yeah, let me try it. Let me do it. Let me get hands on keyboard. Let me see how this works. And essentially really though, I think I was very, very lucky to be able to work for a lot of different companies and organizations who kind of supported that kind of thinking too. I think that's super, super important, because you have to have that support, right? If you do have new ideas or you want to drive a little bit of innovation, you have to have some sort of, leadership that's standing behind you and kind of pushing you and helping you. And so I've been super, super lucky in the companies that I've worked for that have allowed me to do that.
Yeah, because transformation is incredibly challenging. Right? So yeah, having that leadership backing is so fundamentally critical. So tell us a little bit about the Integer Group.
Yeah, so the Integer Group is one of the world's leading commerce agencies, and we're focused on any spaces that drive any kind of commerce efforts, right? So anywhere where any kind of transaction can happen is where we feel that we have the right to play, whether that is online, offline, brick and mortar, digital, social commerce, different things like that. And we are a key member of the Omnicom Commerce Group. And so that's kind of how we ladder up into the Omnicom family.
So I am kind of curious, with COVID and everybody transforming their sales model, really their sales channels. Did you guys see an impact on your volume of business?
Well, I think we were very lucky in that a lot of our clients that we are working with were considered kind of vital during the COVID, during the pandemic, right? And so a lot of their efforts were accelerated in terms of making sure that we were able to get the product to the people as needed. And so we were really lucky to work with really great clients. And so the business was not impacted drastically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So can you share a little bit about your team? How many people you manage? What does the team look like?
Yeah, absolutely. My team is actually fairly small. I only have 6 people on my team. And that's kind of done on purpose, right? Because for me, it's all about being able to be smaller, to be nimble, speed to market, being able to bring solutions to clients very, very quickly. Because in this environment, especially because it's changing so rapidly and quickly, you can't sit there for a year and try to drive data initiatives. It has to happen instantly. And so when I basically started the team, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I purposefully designed it to be rather small. And I wanted to instead bring in, technologies and automation to see how we could scale very, very quickly. And so even though we're a team of 6, we basically act as a team of 20.
Hmm.
And the way that we are kind of set up is also kind of interesting. So yes, I have analytics, data science capabilities on the team, but at the same time, I've also brought in research and innovation. And so we kind of sit in this very kind of agile group that can move very, very quickly. And the reason research is on my team as well is so that we can also run experiments very quickly. If you do have a product you're trying to bring to market, like an AI solution or machine learning model or whatever it might be, how can we experiment with it very quickly and then show its viability and then bring it to market? So they help us, she helps us set up our experiments. And then innovation in order to, for new thinking, and also for kind of product management and different things like that. So that's kind of how our team sits, and that's kind of how we act.
So did you created this group?
I did. Yep. I started this. I basically pitched my role to our global CEO, Ellen Cook, again, someone who was super supportive of my initiatives. And she said, okay, well, design a team and see what that looks like. And so I was able to, I took a step back. I was allowed to do some research and some learning. And I started to look at how, the bigger Amazon, Alibaba, like how are these companies setting up their analytics teams, and how are they, and their AI and their data science teams, how are they able to get products out to market so quickly where other companies it takes so long? And then based off of some of the work that they were doing and based off some of the other things I was reading and learning about, I basically designed the team in this way.
So you mentioned deliver products quickly. Can you give me a feel? What's the order of magnitude of quickly?
Yeah, quickly 2 days.
Oh,
Essentially 2 days.
Oh man, that's some velocity there.
Yeah.
My goodness. Oh, so you had to have enabled yourself with some technology to do that.
Absolutely. So just to give you kind of an example, I mean, obviously data processing takes the longest time and still does. But we partnered early on with Data Robot, which is, as you are familiar, an AI cloud provider. They do automated machine learning, but also auto data processing. They've basically automated the entire life cycle of data science, right? All the way through to deployment applications and different things like that. And so we work with them pretty heavily on a lot of the different projects. But what it allows for us to then do is just take as an example, if you are creating, let's just say, a marketing mix model or something like that, it'll take you months to create one, depending on how complex the data set is, obviously, and different things like that. And then for us, essentially, if we have the data, we have it formatted just right, we can basically spin one up in about 2 days. And have it up and running and adding efficiencies to clients within that 2-day time frame. So very, very quickly. And then if it doesn't work, right, like we then are out to market and experimenting within a week. And then as we experiment and we start to gather the data back, we are then able to make the changes very, very quickly to the model if we need to retrain it or add more data, whatever that may look like, and then get it back into production and up and running. And so that's kind of how we work. Yeah, very, very quickly.
Yeah, you must have some happy clients. My goodness. Talk about agility. That's really awesome. So share with me some of the cool data products that you're doing. So you mentioned these machine learning models, which I categorize those as analytic products, right? And rolling out some software to do something. What's some of the cool stuff you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one that I mentioned is a marketing mix AI, obviously. That one's really interesting because you can, if you do think about traditional marketing mix models, it does take, about a couple months for you to get it up and running. And at that point in time, the market has already shifted, right? And it's always based off of historical data. Obviously, there's companies that are doing things more in a predictive fashion as well. But with the product that we have, you can essentially run it in real time. So as we're getting real-time data back from how media is performing, we can be optimizing every single day across channels, across different tactics, across different retailers. And so it's very nimble, and it's very quick. I mean, it takes 2 days to build. So quickly, you can put it quickly into production. And so you're taking into account the real-time environmental factors that might be affecting media performance. And so some of those things are, that's one of the ones that we're working on. The other one that's kind of interesting is a creative AI solution. This one kind of came out of an idea. I was sitting in a creative briefing, and the creative team was going back and forth. Should the text be blue? Should it be black? Should this color be red? Should it be blue? And I was like, there has to be some sort of data solution that can account for, what are the right colors to use? Should you be putting 2 products versus 1 product? Should you be putting, what should your backdrop be? That kind of thing. And so I think one of the largest underused data sets today are images. There is so much data in images, right? Especially if you can tie them to some sort of performance metrics. And so being able to do that, translating the images into metadata and then tying it to performance metrics, allows for you to then essentially run prescriptive scenarios prior to even going out in the marketplace, understanding that if you change this color from red to blue, for example, then you are going to drive your conversions down. If you increase the logo, or you put 2 products versus 1, how is that going to affect your success? And so that's the one project that we're kind of working on right now. That's super interesting, and that I'm very excited about.
Interesting. Now I'm getting all emotional. That's very cool. Oh man. So in this incredibly nimble and agile world where you're pushing a lot of velocity, all these capabilities out to your clients, what keeps you up at night? What are your worries?
Yeah, I mean, going back to my daughter, definitely my daughter, right? Because you never know what they're going to do next, especially since she's just entering the teenage years. But I mean, truly, there's a lot of things, right? I think one of my passion points, especially through COVID, has been the future of work. Like, where's that going, right? And if I or other people are starting to deploy some of these AI solutions in the marketplace, how does that affect my coworkers? How does it affect the people in the company? And so I think those types of things have to be thought through very, very quickly and effectively, because you can't just put an AI in production and expect people to continue to operate the way that they have, right? Especially if it's automating some of the business or some of the things that they're doing. And I mean, not through the fault of anyone, but it is difficult to change. It definitely is. And so how do you start to integrate these solutions without putting anybody's job in jeopardy, truly? And how do you make it more of a collaboration, And there was a really great book that was written, I think it was published by Harvard Business Review. And it was, I think it's called Human and AI, and I can definitely send you this later because I don't remember the exact title, but it was something about reimagining work when, in an AI powered world. And it's, as an AI leader, you then have to start to think about how do the products that I'm building actually support people versus taking the place of, right? And companies who do this and do this very well are succeeding, and those that are replacing humans with automation are actually losing out, and they're starting to see declines in sales and productivity and everything, right? You have to have that human connection. And so it's just, how do you upskill people? I do think a lot about that. How do you train people? How do you educate them? How do you make sure they're not scared of the technology? But ultimately, how can you also lead a charge where you do have a little bit more of a voice in terms of how you ethically implement AI solutions? And so those are some of the things I think about for sure.
I'm picking up some signals around behavioral analysis or psychometrics, or not necessarily psychoanalysis, but is that because I am aware that many companies are hesitant to go in, dip their toes into machine learning or AI, because they're just afraid of it, afraid of the transformation. sounds like what you're bringing out is you have to think that through as part of enabling any kind of machine learning model that's going to either predict the behavior or guide the behavior.
Yeah, you absolutely have to build that into how you produce, right? It's the
Mhm.
products themselves, because like say, for instance, with, the creative solution, for example, the way that that might change a creative's job is that instead of just, thinking through, oh, I like red more than blue. Now you have a data-driven tool to actually be able to use in order to make that decision, right? But then at the same time, you have to make sure that the AI is actually giving you the right data. Does it make sense? You still have to have that ability to kind of interrogate the model.
Mhm.
And so the way that it changes everything inside of a company is that you then have to train these people up. You have to involve them in the process of building the actual model. How do you educate them? How do you involve them, right? This is the training data set. Do you understand it? Do you understand these outputs, or do you understand the inputs that are going into the model, right?
Mhm.
And then at the same time, though, they have to say, hey, I don't think this data actually makes sense, but maybe this is kind of what we should basically shift the data. So now they're starting to get an understanding of the training data set. They're understanding the inputs of how the model is actually training. And then throughout the process, you have to be able to explain it to them as well, right? Here is how the AI is making its decisions. Does this look right to you? Does it not? Because you are still the expert.
Yeah.
And then from there, you basically say, okay, now this is done. Now run it. Let's run experiments, make sure that it's viable and that it works. But at the same time, don't always trust it. Like, you cannot always trust a model. You cannot always trust an AI because, depending on the training data set, something could be off. And so you still have to have that expertise in order to make that final decision, and also to let us know, hey, something is wrong with this model. I think we should retrain it because the outputs I'm getting don't seem right.
Yep.
So along the way, you have to educate people to start thinking that way versus just taking AI and saying, yeah, what the AI is saying is right, and let's just go with it, right?
So again, picking up signals as we're chatting, that sounds to me like there's a need for the creation of a lot of telemetry that helps us understand how the model's executing. Is that part of your process to make sure that the model is designed with the telemetry being produced as well?
Absolutely. I think explainable AI is so important. You have to be able to understand what the output or how it's making its decisions. I mean, obviously, through all the algorithms and different things like that, there's a lot of black boxes inside the models themselves, but you have to be able to explain, here's the data, here's what the AI can do, here's what it cannot do. And it has to be fully transparent, to internal teams as well as to any clients who you're executing it for.
You touched on ethics a little bit. Given I'm seeing evidence that there's going to be some new legislature put in place around the world around the ethical use of machine learning. Like, for example, in the United States, I think it's the Algorithmic Accountability Act that's going through Congress right now. How do you do the ethics review part when you're building and explaining and preparing to deploy a model?
Yeah, and I think that goes into defining exactly what ethics mean as well. You know what I mean? Because ethics could be, is this model biased? Is the data biased towards any specific segment or whatever that may be? Or are you building ethical AI products in terms of, like, just to give you an example, with data robot and auto machine learning platforms that are coming, and data robot is one of many, right? Anyone with a data set can start to build AI solutions and deploy them instantly. You don't have to have special knowledge. You do not have to be a specialized data science in order to take advantage of these technologies. So if any bad character has some sort of data set that they then want to quickly build a model around and deploy in the marketplace, how do you stop them from doing that as well, right? Because instantly you could be sitting on 15, 20 different machine learning models that could wreak havoc on any situation. And so I think it's a broader conversation. It's not just about the data that goes in, but it's also about how it's being deployed, who is building it, and what are they building it for.
Yeah, and then if it was built for a particular use and
Yeah.
you want to reuse it, you have to be cautious of that as well, right? If I
Mhm.
built, for example, if I built a credit risk scoring algorithm for California, Southern California or Southern LA, is it ethical for me to take that same model and deploy it in Boston?
Exactly.
Right? Okay. So even though the model itself doesn't have unintended bias upon the creation and deployment, if it gets reused, it could, unintended bias could show up. Is that part
Mhm.
of? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And at the same time, though, if you do have people who don't have a data science background or data, or even thinking about these ethical things in the data set, and they
Mhm.
just throw it in and they just say, hey, I can build a model too, here you go. And they
Mhm.
deploy it and have used bad data, without truly understanding all the different implications around it. Yeah, it's going to be a super, super important conversation for sure.
Well, those are the kind of things would keep me up. Yeah. So with all this excitement, all this agility, all these concerns around moving technology landscapes, the potential for new legislation, we understand what's keeping you up at night, but how do you keep your balance? How do you keep your emotional and energy balance intact?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly difficult, right? Especially since we're all in this digital space. And so I think we're all kind of suffering from Zoom fatigue. But I paint a lot. I paint, I do yoga, I do meditation. I have a really bad knee, so I can't really run or walk. So I ride my Peloton quite a bit. Do all those types of things. But I always go back to, I think you have to have a great, or you have to have a great understanding of what your purpose is. Like, what are your ultimate goals? What are your objectives? What do you want to achieve? You have to have a fundamental understanding of who you are and what you want to do. And by doing that, you can reshift your focus. I think that there was a book I was reading. They call it mindset or mindsight. It's actually mindsight. And it's
Mindset.
your ability to focus yourself from certain situations. So as an example, like say I'm going into a super stressful meeting, I'm presenting or different things like that. But ultimately I know my ultimate purpose and goal in life is to do this thing. And so you're able to shift your focus because you're able to say, wait a minute, this meeting, it's super stressful and I'm super, nervous about it. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't affect my goal in any way, even if I fail, like even if it doesn't work out, or even if I mess up or whatever it might be, does it affect my long-term goal and what I'm ultimately trying to achieve? And you're like, no, it actually really doesn't. If I bomb this meeting, nothing's going to happen to me, right? So you have to have a really, really good understanding of your purpose and your goal, because that allows for you to shift your focus. Same thing with values as well, right? Because ultimately, if you say, my family is the most important thing in my life, and are they going to be really mad at me if I fail at something? No, they're not. They're still going to love me. And if you have kind of that sense, you then have the ability to kind of shift your focus in the direction you want to shift it towards.
Yeah, so these objectives they're not just career objectives. You're balancing them in with your personal objectives and your family and probably some spiritual aspect. And
Exactly.
interesting. Um, I do know that painting behind you was one of your
Yeah,
works. Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
Yep.
An example of your meditation. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Heidi, what a phenomenal story. Um, I am so impressed with the whole what you are achieving inside of Integer. And I hope people on the call get a glimpse of the art of the possible here. Because here at Great Data Miners, we're really pushing, kind of, the whole self-service model, including AI, right? So I hope more and more people see that opportunity because there's incredible intrinsic unlocked value waiting to happen.
Mhm.
You've got a
Absolutely.
great story, Heidi. Thank you so much for that. Yeah,
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for
yeah,
having me.
yeah. Kaylee, do we
Great.
have any
Yeah.
call to action? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to connect with Heidi and, kind of open up a discussion with her, let me put her LinkedIn into the chat. You can, of course, find her at Heidi Bailey on LinkedIn, but I've got the link right here too. So let me drop this in here. This is a fascinating discussion, Heidi. I love what you just said about having your own personal purpose and your mission and your goal. And then, moreover, using that as a way to either de escalate your own personal stress or kind of like what we talked about before we got on the line about like having something that you're afraid of. If it is aligned with your goal, there's also a sort of a freedom in that because you're like, oh, I have to do this. I have really no choice.
Mhm.
So I think that's fantastic advice. Okay, so I've dropped Heidi's LinkedIn into the chat, and I would welcome anybody who wants to join us on any of our future sessions. You can, of course, find us at greatdataminds.com /events. And I thank everybody for joining us today, and especially a big thanks to you, Heidi. This is a fascinating conversation. A lot of good
For
takeaways.
having me. This was really fun.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
great.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.